Welcome to Cultural Connections Lab. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Forbes. We are here to talk with educational professionals around the world to impact and influence the education system as we focus on cultural connections and the education of multilingual, diverse students. We're excited to have you join us today, and we sincerely hope that you enjoy the show.
Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to take your school district to new heights? Introducing EduSkills, the leading software as a service platform for Title III and multilingual support in education. Having been a director of English language development for a school district, I was honored and privileged to get to use EduSkills. EduSkills understands the importance of equitable education and empowering multilingual learners to thrive in today's classrooms. Their cutting-edge technology provides school districts across the nation with the tools they need to enhance language acquisition, foster inclusivity, and improve academic outcomes. With their seamless implementation and comprehensive support, I have witnessed EduSkills ensure a smooth transition for school districts, empowering their educators to provide targeted instruction and personalized support. So why wait? Unlock the potential of your school district today with EduSkills. Visit their website, eduskillsllc.com, or call them at 405-879-9898 to schedule a demo. EduSkills, transforming education one student at a time.
Welcome everyone to another podcast episode with myself, your host, Dr. Kelly Forbes. I am incredibly excited to be with three amazing master level students from the University of Central Oklahoma. I have had the honor and privilege to learn alongside these amazing individuals, and I'm so thankful that you are here to be guests today on Cultural Connections Lab. So, to start off, we have Miss Aya Iwamoto. We also have Eva Ala Torre, and we have Genevieve Simmons. And so we are excited to be here today because we want to have a conversation centered around our multilingual learners in our school system and the utilization of technology and how we can help create digital classrooms for our students. So welcome. How are you all doing today?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Well, hey, I'm really thankful that you're here, and I'm excited just to dig in and have a fun conversation together about this topic. So, but before we do jump in, I would like you all to take a moment to introduce yourselves and brag about how amazing you are. Listeners, these are amazing individuals. So here we go. I hope that you have a great time with us. Aya, would you like to start?
Hello, konnichiwa. My name is Aya Iwamoto. I'm so glad to be back here. And then thank you so much for having me today. よろしくお願いします.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm glad that you're back too. We have another friend of ours who was here at a previous podcast, right? And so we have Aya, but we also have Genevieve Simmons.
Hello, my name is Genevieve. I am currently a teacher at the Language Company on the University of Central Oklahoma's campus, and I currently teach English to adults.
Listeners, if you have not listened to the previous podcast with these students, I encourage you to go back and do so. It's absolutely wonderful. But Genevieve, congratulations, because the last time that you were on the podcast, you were a substitute teacher, correct?
Yes.
And now you are working and helping adults, right?
Yes, so I have students from all over the world. They're coming. They're trying to go into university here in the U.S., but they don't have the language skills yet. And so I help build those skills up. And then we also have people who are residents learning English and wanting to improve their English that I'm teaching.
Excellent. So they are acquiring those skills needed in English. That is wonderful. Well, thank you for your service, truly. And we have a new friend with us today. She is an incredible teacher, and I will let her introduce herself, Miss Eva La Torre.
Hello, hola, me llamo Eva La Torre. My name is Eva La Torre, and I am a fourth grade teacher at Putnam City District in Oklahoma City. I am a general education teacher, so I teach all students in all subjects.
Excellent. I'm so glad that you're here today, and thank you so much for all of your service in the field of education, especially in elementary school. I love elementary school. I was an elementary school principal also in a one-way immersion school in Tulsa, And I just love elementary. I have a great heart for it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm excited to be here today and to have this conversation. We are in such a wonderful field. We get to serve so many amazing students, a very diverse community of students, and in our respective course of study right now, we have been focused on digital age teaching for English learners. This is a book, listeners, that is a wonderful, wonderful book written by Heather Rubin, Lisa Estrada, and an upcoming guest in March. So you'll be hearing from her in March or in April from Andrea Honigspeld. And I am so excited that we're going to be able to jump in and have this conversation because we recognize that in our classrooms that we do have a variety of languages and cultures represented, and there are many teachers that are always wondering what they can do to help students not only acquire content and learn the content, but how do we do that also acquiring language, the language other than our native language perhaps, plus the language of content. And we have been going through and studying through this book and through this course about how technology can help us in that area. So Ava, I actually would like to start with you because you are boots on the ground right now as a fourth grade teacher in an elementary school. And you actually have boots on, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So literally, there are literally boots on the ground right now. And today you served your students in your classroom. And so I'm really curious, just from at least your own experience and your own perspective, what you've learned in this course and what we've been discussing and talking about and now wanting to share with our listeners and other educators out there who might be hearing this. What is your perspective of the reality of how technology is currently being used and integrated in our classrooms to support our multilingual learners?
Thank you for that question. It's a really good one. In the sense where, yes, we go to school to be teachers, or some people just do not, and that's okay, but we just don't understand how we can provide our EL students with the resources that can be beneficial for them. So taking this class specifically has showed me many different websites that are there to support us as teachers and support our students, as well as apps where students can use and different techniques that we can do in the classroom, which being by translanguaging or by figuring out how much information that we need to give them at one time and understand just the whole variety of not expecting them to do a whole lot, but understanding that they do know a lot and that their language is a superpower. Mm-hmm. We just have to figure out what ways we can use technology to better find a resource for them. So with that being said, yes, I definitely have learned a lot of more websites and apps that I can help my students. And then let me tell you, there has been a grand difference. There has been, and I feel like they understand it, and now they feel more comfortable writing in their language on the board. And for some reason, now we speak 3. Yeah. Instead of just 1, we understand each other, and it's that consistency of not being shy with it. And you know what? Let's get our app if we need help, or let's pause the video to talk about it. How can we understand this video better or understand this information better? And then, yeah.
I think that that oftentimes we get a curriculum, for example, and mm-hmm. it gives us the ideas of what to do, leveraging technology in that classroom. And then we kind of get in the routine of maybe just staying within that kind of limited space, perhaps. And we've been able to explore so many other options and ways in which we're able to engage students through, like you said, some translanguaging practices, leveraging the multiple languages that might be represented in our school, because the teacher might not be able to speak or understand all those languages. Mm-hmm. And so we've been discussing ways where we can really teach grade level content and also not have any language barrier, because we do recognize the assets that our students, our multilingual students most specifically, bring to the classroom, not only with their cultures, but with their languages. And so we can build upon that. I'm curious also, just to go a little bit deeper into that question, what is something new that you have come across in leveraging technology, whether that be in helping yourself prepare for a class? Maybe it's something that is AI. Everyone's really into artificial intelligence right now and how you were leveraging that perhaps. But what is something maybe new that you have found and considered going through this course and considering all of the new options that we have really, been studying and discussing about ways to not only teach content, leveraging that, but how language is no longer a barrier because you have that technology? Is there anything that kind of stands out?
Oh, I can think of one memory last week where we, of course, like you said earlier, we have to follow our curriculum, which is a expectation for us, of
Yes.
course. Now it's how we utilize the curriculum. When we're watching a video, instead of just playing the video like I would used to do, just play the video, I realized that some of my students were really confused and they were wanting to understand what the video was talking about. So I took a pause, I looked at them, and I asked them, nothing happens if you don't ask. Nothing will improve if you don't ask. So I asked, how can we understand this? And they thought, I need words. I need words to follow along. Can you put the subtitles on? And I said, you know what? Yes, I can. Can we slow down the video? We are in 2024. We can definitely slow down videos for them to understand it a little slower. So that's one thing. Another thing was the words. Another thing was they asked me to give gestures. So I was up there showing them from one point to the other point, using my body language for them to kind of understand where the teacher or whoever was talking about. So a lot of gestures. IA or AI.
AI, yeah.
Yes, I use that occasionally, in the sense where I will ask, how can I ask my Afghan student, or how can I ask a student without always going back to Spanish, or how can I ask her for her to understand. For instance, I didn't necessarily know that a thumbs up in her culture was bad, and I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have used the internet and asked, how can I communicate with her to know that she's understanding me or I'm understanding her.
Yeah.
And it was simple, do not do a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Instead, lock your first index fingers to understand that you're communicating with each other. Or, yes, or things like that. And with that being said, going with my Afghan student, there's certain websites or apps that we assume will have all the languages, but do not. So it doesn't, we're like, just Google it. Okay, well, Googling it can work, but you have to keep diving in to see what kind of other options you have there.
Yeah.
So that has helped me a lot in the classroom to find a good app to communicate with her or to communicate with my other students, or playing Ed Puzzles videos where I will have a video playing with the subtitles and with slowing it down and then pausing it to check for understanding.
No, I think that's fantastic. And, it's such a simple thing that we don't always consider, but literally putting on the subtitles. Well, first of all, thank you for asking your students. I think that's let's just take a moment for that. I think that's the best thing that we can do. We can learn so much from a textbook and through our conversations, but whenever we stop and ask the children that we're serving, what do you need? How can I help? And then they can better teach us of how to better teach them. So thank you for doing that. But I think it's fantastic just to do small things. Sometimes we're looking for these big, miraculous things that's going to happen all of a sudden. Sometimes it's just as simple as putting on the subtitle, slowing down that video, but then you were incorporating some total physical response and having this movement happening where they were able, this acting that was happening where they were able to understand you more. I also really appreciate that you touched on the fact of using AI to inquire more about some culture that your students represent and that they share in that space with all of you. And so I think that's such an awesome way of using AI. Now, of course, as a side note, make sure that you always go back and do your research and don't assume that everything is correct on AI. But what an awesome tool to use as a resource to go in and to try to understand more of the cultures that are represented in your classroom. And I think if we can reflect and consider the right questions to ask, then that could give us some really great information. So as we're in our classrooms and we're observing our students and we become curious, I encourage you to get to the point of being fascinated, where you want to know so much more about them and their culture from where they come, and then have that be displayed in the classroom as well. Now, Genevieve, question for you, because we also have parents in our schools who want to learn English as an additional language as well. And you're currently working, I believe, with professionals, correct, that are here for a job purpose or maybe for a university purpose to gain a certain level of proficiency in English.
Yes.
How have you seen technology used with the adults that you serve?
So, I mean, if I'm being honest, I haven't seen it as much because there aren't a lot of resources for adult learners out there. But with this course, I have started to take more, like the websites Ava kind of mentioned, the different apps we've explored and how I can use them with my adults, because even though they're an adult, they're also a kid at heart. So you can still use some of these fun resources with them, and they enjoy it too. So even with my adults, there's like a website like Look It, and it's literally a gaming app, and you put in the questions that you're wanting them to practice, and they can play against each other. They can play by themselves, but they're practicing the language this way. And I'll typically like stop and pause on the questions too, and have us go over the questions as a class. And they've seemed to really enjoy it, using videos to explain concepts, or using videos like TED Talk. TED Talk, it has lots of videos online, and so I'll use those to have them listen and take down dictation notes, or
That's a good idea.
Just see,
And they're
compare,
good videos.
compare and contrast what they're able to hear to test their listening skills as well. And it's usually higher level content for the adults as well, so it's staying with their where they need to be academically as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, I'm really curious about this next question. Aya, this is for you. So, what is the biggest difference that you've noticed between Japan and the United States in the school systems from your experiences and what you've learned in both different settings? But what are the big differences in the utilization of technology in just the school system in general, even if it's not necessarily for multilingual learners, but maybe also for any multilingual learner?
Yes, so I grew up in Japan, and then I graduated university in Japan too. So I kind of know how it works both here in the United States and Japan. But the biggest difference is that the Japanese school, like in general, elementary to university, they think that utilizing the technology is like a treat. So usually you do learn like language and other academic contents without technology but sometimes we have visual, but doesn't mean it's always helpful. But then sometimes like 5 lessons, maybe 1 lessons at the end of the class, they have like let's play video, let's watch videos about regarding to the topic that we learned. But other than that, I don't remember use the technology to especially learn something. I remember I learned computer, how to use it, but not the utilizing to learn the academic contents or language.
And in here, in the United States, a lot of schools have one-to-one technology.
Yes.
Or they have a classroom set and every student has their Chromebook or their iPad or something out all the time, almost.
I think the budget-wise too.
Oh,
in
yes.
Japan, we don't really
Maybe
provide
this the time as well where I didn't grow up with having an iPad or a Chromebook in class. We had one computer lab, and we would alternate.
Okay, that ages me.
We would have a computer lab, and you would just kind of like alternate what class is going to have the computers that day, or we did have like a whiteboard for the teacher, but I mean like time has changed, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And now we see it a lot more often in the classrooms.
Well, and like growing up, I was there when smartboards became
The thing.
the thing, and they were being integrated. And while they're still in classrooms now, while I feel like they still use the smart boards, it's now considered like older technology when you have the computers and the iPads at your fingertips. And now you can move where you can still have it on the screen with the smart board, interact with it this way, but you can have them each pull it up on their own screen, and they can then work at their own pace as well. So if you have those students who are faster, like higher language levels, they can work a little bit ahead. So you're not holding them back. But then if the lower levels need more attention, more time, they can take that time. Whereas with the smart board, even you're just like, all right, we're going at this speed because that's the speed that I'm teaching it at. But you're just using technology that way versus just the regular whiteboard.
Yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that we could be presenting something and they are seeing it on their iPad as well at the same time, and they're interacting. That's why I really like Edpuzzle and Nearpod, because you have it displayed on the board. No one can see what you see, but they themselves are able to type in their answers so they can go in their pace, right? And as well as with our pace as a class.
But I never remember I don't remember any day that I typed to do something. It was always handwriting, especially before the college, onto the high school. Because I think our society still think that using the AI make people lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have a stereotype mindset still, and so.
Well, and I think a lot of people have that concern. And
Not
I think
only
it's a valid
Japan,
concern.
yeah.
And also whenever you talk about handwriting, I think that we could do more writing by
I agree.
hand, because
Yeah.
you're the 4th grade teacher right now. How is handwriting?
Not great.
Not great.
Not
There we go.
great.
Yeah. So I think there has to always be that healthy balance.
Yes.
True.
But then it's interesting whenever you consider that the reality is that technology is advancing so much and all the time and so rapidly that if our students are not learning about technology, and if they're not engaged and not learning how to leverage this technology for content acquisition, to maybe learn another language, etc., whatever that is, then they could potentially be behind, right? And so I think we're always constantly finding ourselves in that right balance, but also in that right race that we're in.
Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Like, if we're not the ones teaching how to use technology properly, they're going to use it the wrong way. And then eventually, there are future leaders, or at least the little kids that I'm with right now. And our children are our future leaders. So if we don't teach them how to use something properly, they're going to just adapt by their neighbor or someone who is not doing it correctly. And we don't want those kinds of leaders. We want the leaders who know how to use it properly and who eventually will teach somebody else how to use it correctly.
Yeah, definitely. And and we've discussed this too, teaching our students how to be digital citizens and what that looks like, helping them understand what is not necessarily true or accurate, where to find appropriate good resources and sources to find your information, and then to do some extra research and digging to make sure that you are well informed and not just believing anything that you happen to see on TikTok, perhaps, or anything like that, right? That you're able to really go through a filter and to understand and to be able to distinguish what is correct, accurate information and what is just misinformation, right?
Especially because they have so much of that information at their fingertips, and anybody can be a news reporter, but doesn't mean it's accurate news.
And that happens all the time. And some people, so Gen A, Gen Z students, we discussed them because those are the students that we serve right now. So we have our Gen A and Gen Z students that are always connected to their phones, and they are finding most of their information through social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, others. There's more coming out. There's just, so many places. And so we need to be able to teach them, one, how to use this technology for their learning. 2, how to make sure that they're protecting themselves whenever they are present online. But then 3, how to be able to, again, distinguish between correct information and just blatant misinformation. Yeah, it is a whirlwind out there for sure right now with technology. So I I want to get back though, talking about the utilization of this technology in our classrooms, and it's important to make the statement that using technology in the classroom does not mean just turning on your smartboard, perhaps, right? And so before we get too deep into it and get into to some of our prepared questions, what is any way that you all have used technology specifically to learn another language? I'll just leave it as an open question for anyone.
So I started learning Mandarin in the spring, and I was using Duolingo, still use it. It is great because I can do it at my own pace. It does practice reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills on the app, and it's just at my fingertips on my phone. So I am enjoying using it, and it's game-like. So you have like little goals you can work towards, and it gives you notifications like you haven't done your minutes that you set for yourself today, and so it reminds me just to take that time out to learn.
Yeah.
I also use some social media apps to practice Korean. I'm still keeping up with my Korean skills from when I lived over there. And
Good for you.
I try to follow like the news sources that are from Korea, and I just practice my Korean by reading what it says there. But then I have to go back and check because it's using language that I haven't quite learned yet. But then I'm using that skill of fact checking and practicing, and so those are two ways that I'm using it.
That is so fun. I didn't know that you were taking on Mandarin. That is exciting.
Yeah.
Look at you go. Polyglot. I love it. Anyone else have experience leveraging technology to help them learn another language?
I've only used Duolingo, and I saw that now they have kind of updated it where you can have a phone call with like whoever
it's
is on the
changed.
other side, which is really cool because that was one thing that
I didn't know about that.
yes,
It changed recently.
yes, it'll call you and you'll answer, but then you have to like sign up for the weekly plan or whatever it is. But yeah, I thought it was really cool that you can use be in a phone call and speaking whatever, practicing your language that you're learning. Yeah.
That's so
Is
exciting.
it to AI or to someone?
AI.
Like actual person?
AI, unless you
okay.
add a friend who's also learning the same language as you.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting. So, another way. That is exciting.
I have one similar to that one, like a phone call, but the app called Hello Talk.
Okay.
You sign up and then choose the language that you can speak, and then the other one is I think you are studying. So in that case, for my case, that I'll put the Japanese that I can speak, and then learning, for example, like English or Korean, other language, and then you can find the person who has the same situation but the opposite. For example, like Genevieve, wants to learn Japanese, but she can speak English. And then we start like talking on chatting. We can do that, exchange the message, and then sometimes we can do the phone call. But purposely to improve language through meeting people at the same background.
I did not know about all of those.
Hello Talk. That's very
Hello Talk,
Yes.
but I did not know the new feature on
Duolingo,
Duolingo either. There is a wonderful director of Title III in a local school district, and she has everybody on Duolingo or on some platform to learn another language, and she always encourages that language to use around them. And she speaks Spanish, fluent Spanish, but it's so much fun, and it brings people in together a whole lot, and they have a great time. Those are great personal ways that you all have been able to leverage technology. I know for myself, my cell phone's in Spanish, my computer's in Spanish, I have todo en español. I love it so much, and then whenever I'm listening to the TV, I'm always thinking about things in Spanish. So I'll quickly pull up an app and translate it real quickly and make sure that it's right, or could I do that in my practice, just interpreting out loud as the TV's going. I love language so much, so I'm always playing around with it. But then I get excited whenever I get to go to school districts and talk about how they can use the things that we've been talking about, again, in this book, The Digital Age Teaching for English Learners, and then leveraging some of the new AI tools that I figured out to help teachers create lesson plans around sheltered instruction practices and dual language education practices, like we talked about with metalinguistic awareness and translanguaging, and just to help develop more resources, even maybe bilingual or multilingual resources for our students. So it's really fun to be in this work, and it's fun to be in this work at this digital age that we are in, because there are so many resources and opportunities that it can feel overwhelming sometimes for teachers. Like there's so many things out there to do, and I just want to encourage everyone, breathe, find just 1, 2, or 3 that you really like and you feel good at, and then just start with that. Do your best, forget the rest, and have grace and compassion for yourself and students, but just lean into it, right? Just lean into it and have fun.
Well, you could say even for like the ED puzzle, like Ava had never heard of it before this class, and she's already talked about how she's been using it in her classroom already.
Yeah? And was it scary?
Well, you have to practice on your own first.
Yeah. Definitely
no,
practice.
no.
Don't just show up in the classroom and be like, all right,
Let's find out.
here we go. Whatever happens,
practice
happens. Yeah, you got to
practicing
plan.
first.
Yeah.
Yes, I was actually very thankful. There, like I said before, there's so many different resources out there that we don't know about unless we're told or we do our own research. And sometimes as teachers, we're just so tired at the end of the day, we don't want to keep looking up for things.
Yeah.
So.
That is a truth and a reality. But that's why everyone out there listening is listening right now, so they can get all the good details from you all, right?
Yes.
You're the masters at this.
And we will be right back. Are you ready to take your K-12 multilingual programs to new heights? Look no further than the experts at Kelly B's Consulting. We're not just consultants, we're partners in education, with a passion for empowering students and enriching your classrooms. At Kelly B's Consulting, we understand the unique cultural and linguistic needs of your diverse student population. Our team of experienced educators will work alongside you, tailoring strategies that transform your multilingual programs. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Visit www.kellybsconsultingllc.com today to learn more and schedule your consultation. Kelly B's Consulting, shaping the future of K-12 multilingual education across the nation. Your success is our commitment. Contact us now and let's start building a brighter tomorrow together. And now, back to the show.
I want to go ahead and start with some of the questions that we had, and I want to start the conversation around the flipped classroom. This is a very wonderful model that that teachers can leverage in their classrooms to help students learning things before they even come to school sometimes, and of course, always be aware and conscious of the students that you're serving and if they have technology at home to be able to do this. So this could be done in a classroom, in a hybrid setting, synchronously, asynchronously, however that looks. But so thinking about a flipped learning classroom, what, in your opinion and from what you all have learned and experienced, what are the advantages of flipped learning for multilingual and multicultural learners? And then also, how can it be designed for equity in our classrooms in this digital context? So again, the advantages of a flipped learning classroom for multilingual and multicultural students, and then how does that help support equity in a digital context in our classroom?
Well, for starters, it allows students to work at their own pace, because if you're giving them the content at home before class, they can look at it on their own. So that way they come into class and they could already have questions. They already have a little bit of that background knowledge, so you can kind of dive in a little bit more.
And they can preview all this in whatever language also.
Yeah, if they need help,
know the content.
they need help with the content because they're not understanding English, then hopefully whichever way that you're presenting the information to them, they have access to it in their own language as well.
Because here's the other point: we can't. We can do all this at the same time, and it takes a whole lot of work and practice and planning, and it is hard. This is a very hard job, but we can't wait for students to acquire language in 5, 6, 7, whatever years, and then say, okay, now that you have that, now let's start doing content. So whenever you are in this flipped classroom digital context, there is this opportunity where students can preview the content, the topic, in whatever language. They can leverage the other websites and resources that help with translation, or even looking up different videos or even different images to help understand that. And that way, whenever they're back in the classroom, they can focus more on the English and not have to be worried about missing out on the content.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I think that goes really along with how language is a superpower, where they take the teacher is giving the information to the student, and they get to understand it and learn and research or read or whatever it is that they need to do at home in their language, right? Just because a student is not at grade level in English doesn't mean that they're not at grade level in their language.
Exactly. Or if not above grade level from
Or
other
above,
students that are
exactly. So
monolingual.
they get to, study it and understand what they're going to go into school and talk about and discuss, but now they're focusing on the targeted language. And I think it's kind of like giving students homework, which apparently now we don't really necessarily do as much, but it's only if you see it in that way, where if you're flipping and you're like, you know what, you have the opportunity to learn this in the language that you desire, and then you come to school and you're ready to conversate in English and practice the language with us rather than having to learn the language, learn the content, learn the content objective and learn the language objective all at the same time with the language as well.
Well, and it's not so much, I mean, yeah, because I do understand that it does feel like a quote-unquote homework thing, but I think it's different having homework, which is a worksheet that was sent home, they have to go do. Of course, there's different types of homework, but this is kind of different in the aspect of more of like an extension of how you're connecting home to school. I mean, there are a lot of good opportunities for this where they're previewing that content, but it can be done in fun, creative ways. It doesn't have to be the stereotypical, just read this, answer 5 questions to check your comprehension, and then come back to class and we'll see how you're doing. This can be engaging, interacting. You could have students working together, having a conversation perhaps, working on their speaking skills and their listening skills as they had already read maybe a short article or watched a quick video or something, and then they can have that conversation and even maybe record a video that they submit to you. And that's something that's a whole lot more fun, kind of like what we're doing now, all getting to be together, have a conversation about this. But it's not like I'm sitting down doing necessarily the quote-unquote stereotypical homework. So I think it's a great opportunity for extension.
Yes. And this also allows for parents to be involved too. So you have those parents who might not know English as well, and they're able to be involved with their students' academics at home, because if they have access to it in their language as well, then they can be more involved with their child and
so
their
glad
learning.
You said that because I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
allowing them to do it at home in their language, it gives them that opportunity. And you hear about how parents will learn English with their child when they're at home doing that homework as well.
Well, the
So
teachers see them logging in at 11 something at night sometimes, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, the kid's up this late, and come to find out it was a parent that was leveraging that same platform of technology that the student was learning, so that way they can learn as well. Yeah, I think it's really fantastic. Lots of fun opportunities.
I have an experience. I think I told you, shared with you my experience, but it was in my English class at my high school. The reason, I can't remember why, but I remember that class and what I learned. They were using the flipped classroom. Yeah, using the videos and the movies. I remember still. So I think that remains longer.
Yeah, it sinks in more then.
Yes, because and then also I felt so prepared. So, and then that increased the aha moment in the classroom compared to a original classroom way. So
I think that's wonderful. I know for myself, and I am fluent in English and Spanish, but whether if it's in English or in Spanish, if it's a very high level text and maybe around a topic that I'm not 100% familiar with, I need extra time. And so I think it's really great for our students because they therefore also have that extra time.
It's that wait time that we're always waiting.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, it's been 30 seconds,
Yes.
but even though we know that they need more in school, we don't have those 2 minutes for each question or whatever it is that day.
Yeah. So with that comes this other component. We have always talked about language domains, right? And we always talk about 4 of them: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I often, just like another great educator, another consultant, and a friend that I get to see, I call him a friend whenever we're at conferences, and I met him before, Dr. Jose Medina has that +1. So it's the listening, speaking, reading, and writing +1, which is that metalinguistic awareness of translanguaging, right? But then there's two other domains that are presented in this book, and they are viewing and visually representing. And so I'm curious, how can educators, and especially Ava, I mean, you're in that elementary setting, and you are working with adults, Genevieve, and you have your own experience from Japan. But so to my point though, how do educators from all these different perspectives that you all bring, and thank you for bringing your personal and professional perspectives here, how do educators effectively balance all those domains, listening, speaking, reading, writing, viewing, and visually representing within this digital age curriculum or within the prescribed curriculum perhaps? And maybe we should actually back up for just 1 second. What is viewing and visually representing even? Let's define that and explain that.
Okay, so viewing is whenever a student is just watching or, visually just seeing things. And visually representing is kind of where they are presenting. Instead of representing, they're presenting what they are understanding.
Based off of
The information that they've been learning,
Uh-huh.
right? Based off of the listening, the reading, the viewing, the speaking, and the writing.
So we have our receptive skills, right?
Yes.
We have our listening, our reading, and then our viewing. So if we have a chart, if we have a graph, we're looking at that. We need to know, what does that mean? We talked about symbols as well. There are different symbols in
yes.
different cultures, right? That
Yes.
can mean different things, and so we have to understand what those things mean. There's viewing that we see in math a whole lot. There's like I said, the charts and graphs, and so we have to understand, what does that mean? And when it comes to viewing, I also think about when you go to different countries, for example, the signs for driving are going to be different sometimes. And so we're viewing that, right? But then you also have your expressive skills. Okay, you have your speaking and you have your writing, but then we also have visually representing. So you might have, for example, the water cycle. And what does this visually represent? And then therefore, how do I present on that? How do I explain that? How do I bring that into the conversation as well? And we forget about that. So whenever you do have those 6 domains of listening, speaking, reading, writing, viewing, and visually representing, social interaction goes up in our students because they're able to have more conversations around that, and the affective filter therefore goes down. And this is what helps all of us with our communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and culture. In the book, it defines this as the 5 C's for 21st century English learners. And I love this. I love how it talks about how this can really promote and support authentic communication and have that contextually rich language classroom, right? So again, how do educators balance all of this within the curriculum?
I'll give one example.
Yeah.
Well, I try my best to use a curriculum and make it exciting and to fit all of my students, which I have a classroom of 26. 16 of them are EL students and 2 of them are already proficient. So that's the grand majority of them, right? Mm-hmm. The other students are, SPED or normal or and peak or whatever you would call it. So there are a grand majority and variety of them. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about right now is we were learning about Native Americans, and the content that we were supposed to be just teaching is all of the 5 regions, which is a whole lot for 4th graders to learn and understand the huge breakdown of every single group, much less 5 of them in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of, they were listening to me, right? Of course, as we're reading, they did a lot of reading and listening and viewing videos and viewing pictures and seeing all that stuff. And then they were writing what they were doing. So as I am speaking and they're watching these videos, they're also trying their best to write their notes that they can. Because I gave them I was like, just keep in mind, try to write as much information that you can. If you need help with spelling, I'm here. But write as much as you can because there's a whole purpose for it. There's a huge purpose for it. And they're like, okay. And now whenever I broke them in, then we got all the information that we did with viewing and seeing and viewing using ED puzzles or my Nearpod or whatever it was, and then reading the curriculum that we were supposed to be using. Then it led to speaking, where they're broken into their groups and they're conversating about the notes that they had all gathered, right?
Nice.
They're talking about the notes that they gathered throughout this time. They were able to add on to their own notes about, okay, maybe I didn't think about it in that way, so they're writing it. And now visual representing is, I realize that in our classes, we could have something on the board, but we don't know what it is.
Right.
Same thing as with Native Americans. I could put up a picture and they don't even know what it is. So I explained that, and then they were able to understand and research using their iPads correctly what that material, what that artifact was and what they were using it for. Then they made this huge presentation, which was actually really cool because they had a whole poster board and using all of the notes that they collected and all of the pictures that they were able to collect together. And I think that was really a positive and good reinforcement for them because they felt comfortable. Instead of speaking in a whole class and talking about it, I gave the opportunity for small groups for students to kind of talk within their level and come up with their notes and come up with a presentation. So when they were able to present, they felt so much more confident and did so much better on their test because they were making those memories, they were using their languages, they were writing as much as they could, they were really trying their best in understanding the language and the content together.
I think it's incredible how we can get so focused on just 4 language domains. And the reason why we're focused on those 4 language domains is because of assessment. Because since we don't have viewing and visually representing as part of that assessment, and therefore we're not necessarily focused on it. And I have to admit, I have thought about it and considered it, but not in this way. And this pushed my thinking to consider that there is a lot of visually represented material that you may not know exactly what it means or what it is. And then we see, and I say this often, we see things the way that we are, not the way that things actually are sometimes. And so we can take things for granted and assume something, right?
Yes.
And I think this is a great reminder to not assume that and to really teach to everything, even beyond any language assessment that we have to give, but teach beyond that and to make sure that we remind ourselves to include the viewing as the receptive skill and the visually representing, as an expressive skill.
I think when I was teaching those lessons, this was a couple of weeks after we had just read the beginning of this book, and we're talking about Bloom's taxonomy and how we flip it. And so in school or in working on my bachelor's, we learned how to go with the flow, go with it, right? Starting with the remembering and understanding and applying and analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And from what the content was, I felt like I had to do it that way. So I did. And then I brought that project where they're using that visual representing. Then I flipped it where they are able to create and evaluating the information that they gathered, analyzing what they got, applying it to their poster. Then they were understanding because they're working together. Then remembering what it was, and their performance was a lot better.
I love that the book brings that up, how you take Bloom's taxonomy and you flip it upside down. And one great thing that we have learned and discovered from that is that we learn so much more about what students already know. They can build upon that prior learning and learn more about them and their backgrounds and build upon that as well. Because again, we come at this with an asset-based lens. They're bringing more information than what we think. The language proficiency levels do not equate cognitive ability. That's on Dr. O'Keeley on another previous episode talked about that, and I love that she said that. And that's good for us to remember that as we're looking at any language proficiency level, and it has a few words here or a sentence of what they might be saying, students have more than that, okay? They already have a language. They come with this full linguistic repertoire. We're just adding to it right now, right? And so I love that you bring up that flip of Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm glad that you saw some positive results of that as well.
I would like to share my experience. Like actually last week, I'm working as a coordinator of the Japanese language course for the nonprofit organization here in Oklahoma. So we have 8 teachers and different levels teaching for local communities, and every weekly classes. So and then I went to each classes, not observe, but just to see how they're doing. And then one teacher was using like visual, like videos, and then sometimes like physical and the game, and everybody was standing up, even adult. This is adult class. But the other class was the teacher was just popping up the textbook picture on the white projectors. So like almost no visual.
Oh, okay.
They can see it, but but and then they were talking about how to like they're talking about the phrase when they take a bus in Japan.
Okay.
But for me, I was like, not a lot of people here, knows about like taking the bus because we don't use it here.
No, everybody
Yeah.
has a car in
Yeah.
this part of the country. Yes.
And we have own like a eco card system that you can pay actually, but for the bus, that's in Japan. So nobody knows,
Right.
here. So I thought we need to like include, and then especially for visual, and then the looking about bus is also different.
Yeah.
Looking of the bus is different too. So I thought it's good like example. So after that, we all gathered, and then we shared like conversation, exchange
Yeah.
conversation, and then I create the Google Drive that teachers can upload their own materials, so they can see their others' materials to each other to take away the good points or and to share each other. But I think it's important to be aware, and then like intentional planning to include all the 6 domains.
Yes.
Other than that, it's easy to forget, and then and then usually you're gonna be like your own world, and then you believe this is the best.
Yes. The key word right there is planning. We have to stop and be disciplined to actually do that planning because it does take time.
Yes.
But you're right to your point, because if I saw the bus from Japan or the
Like a system of the payment.
right, the system of the
Yeah.
payment, I may not know what any of that means because I haven't seen it before. It's just because it's not my experience, not my wheelhouse. I love that you did that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh.
I
And
thought it's good.
that's so relevant for our learners too, though, because they come
I
from
was
different
wondering.
countries and they don't have that background knowledge
Yes.
when we're teaching them about Native Americans, for example. Like
Yeah, we don't know.
they probably don't call them that in their countries.
Yeah.
There's different interactions between Native Americans and the others in the country that they come from, and so they probably see it as a different way than what our experience
Right.
is. And so we're explaining, this is what a Native American is, this is where they were originally, and this is where they are now, and they're probably going,
What
What?
does this represent, right?
yeah, they're like, what? And so just thinking of like the payment system you were just saying with the bus, that's completely different for us
Yes.
than you just take that and think about your students in that same regard. Like if you're learning it, you're like, I would have no idea. Your
Yeah.
students are thinking the same thing.
I think this makes me consider in our last podcast, and Ava, you weren't here for it, but like that cultural bias piece that we have sometimes, or the unconscious bias in assessment or in testing or even in teaching your class or whatever that is. And I think that like this is I mean, again, for me, I guess I'm speaking for myself, it's just a good reminder to connect to that, because again, you could have some biased questions but not think of it at all that way, and it's biased in the aspect that, oh, I didn't think about visually representing this or how they're going to view this, that they might not know what that even means because they've never experienced that, or what was the opportunity that I missed to make a connection to that as well. In my teaching, if they have something similar in their country, right? So we could look at a New York metro system and one in Japan and make some similarities to even what that looks like in the BTS in Bangkok, Thailand, right? We can make those connections, but if we don't take time to actually consider that and be intentional about it, like you said, Aya, then that's the missed opportunity that we had. That's a great reminder. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's so good. So another question, speaking about assessments, how can teachers better leverage this technology to design assessments that are going to promote that critical thinking and creativity when it comes to our multilingual students as they're using their own digital tools and resources?
I mean, one thing is with using technology, you can give them, you give them the opportunity to do maybe a presentation online. And so you're doing an assessment this way where they take that information, they put it in a presentation, they record themselves, they put it on this particular app that you're using, the platform that you're using, and then you can give them commentary. Like you can pause and put like the spot, okay, here's some feedback for this particular answer, here's feedback for this particular answer, and so it's a little bit more intentional, it's a little more can't think of the word I want to say, but it's better opportunity for feedback.
And students need what? More feedback.
Yes.
Than they need more teaching.
Yes.
Remember that was one of the quotes in the book, right?
Yes.
Timely feedback. Maybe that's what you're thinking about.
I
You
love
can give it
that
real
one.
timely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Immediate one.
And and by having them do also the presentations in that way, you can also allow them to think more critically too, versus just doing the regular pen and paper and multiple choice, which most teachers, it's the quickest way you can get the test out, quickest way you can have them give the answer. And while you can use technology to have that test be online instead of being on paper so they get that immediate feedback because the system can grade it,
Yeah.
you're still losing out on the opportunity for them to maybe explain their reasoning. Or maybe they can pull up a picture of themselves when they're presenting online so you can see where their thought process was and you can take that into account versus, well, they just didn't mark A.
Right. Well, and then I think it also on the flip side, it gives the teacher another opportunity to consider how they are giving feedback. And so feedback, we often think of it as written or just in a grade format. But now you could do leveraging this technology and some of the, whether it be an app like ScreenPal or any other sort of Microsoft, anything that's going to be flipped, like you can give feedback on a video about something.
Where they're practicing their English, and maybe that student does know a lot, they just are really shy in class. So
Right.
You're giving them the opportunity to use what they do know at their own pace, at their own time, when they can.
Yeah. And I think having the students being able to leverage more of this technology is going to help them with their speaking.
Yes.
Because that's what I see in my experience is that the number one thing that students are really nervous and apprehensive about doing in the classroom, much less on an assessment, is the speaking part. And here there are so many opportunities to put that into our curriculum and to make our lesson plans designed in such a way where it's required, where we know that we have that language objective that we're focused on. So now I have technology that can help leverage that language objective. And then me as the teacher to grade this, if it's a long essay in writing, I'm looking for some certain details, maybe I can find ways for me to leverage AI. Maybe I can leverage AI with a template that has some specific questions to help generate a lesson plan to give me ideas that will be supportive for my students. And going one step further, maybe even based off of their language scores that they get. So, in this moment, I should honestly say a nice shout out to EduSkills, who's the sponsor for the podcast, because that platform helps with all of that. So listeners, if you're interested, look them up. Genevieve, though, you were going to say something.
I just made me think of even when they're doing the video, they could even do some translanguaging, and if maybe they can't think of what they want to say in English, but they can say it in their native language, the teacher can still take that moment to pause, or because with AI technology, with other things, they can take that video and put it somewhere else to get maybe that translation, because maybe the teacher doesn't understand what they're saying, but technology can now take that video, put it here, and it will give the translation.
Yeah.
Or you can transcribe what they said and then copy and paste what they said into AI, so then you can see, oh, they got the content, they just didn't have the language.
Yeah.
So you're still assessing them that way, but so you're like, okay, so maybe I need help with the language here, with maybe the vocabulary, but they obviously understood what they're learning.
And it's so crazy. I noticed, I don't know if anyone else has that on my iPhone, the update for the teclado, where you're typing, that you can have the QWERTY keyboard in English and in Spanish. And so you can even, in my text messages, I'm translanguaging, and even whenever I'm speaking into it, if I go back and forth entre los dos idiomas, then it goes ahead and it puts it in with whatever language I was saying. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, I think, again, that's another way, because we want students to utilize their full linguistic repertoire, right? Because, again, whether or not we give our students, ourselves, or anyone who's bilingual or multilingual permission to translanguage, it's going to be happening. Porque lo que está pasando en este lado de mi mente, it's also happening on this side in English. And if it's happening on this side, pues también en el otro lado. And so it's happening back and forth for me already. And so I get to really pull from my linguistic repertoire, mobilize all of that to provide what we, as we're still acquiring language, but not having to do that to sacrifice another language. And that's why we can cross over that threshold to gain access to content
Yes.
and create comprehensible output to our teachers. So that way you have something that now you can give feedback on to help us in both language and in content.
Well, and I feel like, especially since I feel like most teachers are content teachers, more so that they're assessing for that content. Did they get the content? So if you take away that language, that barrier there, then you're getting a more true assessment versus, because obviously with time, like they'll get that language and you can address it in class, the next day, but you're not harming the student's grade. You're not discouraging them because they obviously already knew the information.
I think that we can use technology to help them express themselves as well, where when they are presenting a presentation or whatever it is, you are able to really get to know your student a lot more and what they really like. And student relationship, what is really, really important to understand where they're coming from and how you can better serve them.
Well, and speaking of service, how can we leverage this technology to help in our communities to be able to enhance collaboration with everyone? Because we have diverse communities, multilingual communities. How do you see us being able to leverage this technology, maybe most specifically AI in this? Because I'm thinking, for example, Hey Gen, if anyone knows about Hey Gen. And FYI listeners, we're not, promoting, supporting necessarily any of these. These are just ones that we've come across. And I haven't used all of them extensively, right? And I've heard some of this from some other people and haven't even tried it myself. But Hey Gen, for example, they're able to take what you are saying, and so I can record myself saying, "Hey parents, welcome to your Title III night. We're so good that you're here." But then it would also have it in other languages represented that I tell it to do. And so the AI changes the mouth where it looks like it's saying it correctly, and it's in that language. So imagine families coming in knowing that that principal doesn't speak 27 languages that are represented in that school, perhaps. But it's so wonderful to be able to maybe visually see that principal there who has taken the time, obviously, to figure out how to leverage AI to be able, And there's a Bilingual Families podcast with another previous guest that we had, Daniela Pereira, and she's absolutely amazing. But her podcast came out just yesterday, and it was 8 minutes long, but it was just talking about 5 minutes how that could make a difference. And she was just talking about how whenever the teacher took just a few minutes to learn how to say her name, not Daniela or Daniela, or what was Daniela, to be able to say how that meant so much. So I think about how there are moments like that in people's lives that it impacts them so much, and that's what made her feel like, I'm happy to be here. This gives me more insight about what Oklahoma is, how people in Oklahoma are, how the U.S. is, and I feel so much more like I belong. So I thought that message was so powerful. But now we really have ways where we can implement technology in such a way to hopefully help everybody feel that in whatever way that we possibly can, even if it's not just face-to-face, one-on-one, like Daniela's experience, an experience where you're leveraging Hey Gen or any other AI, for example, where it has a video where you have the leader of that school welcoming all the parents in multiple different languages. And what a celebration that is.
Our school uses talking points.
Yes.
And when you, the teacher can send a message in English and the parents receive it in whatever language they decide, they prefer. So it translates everything on its own. And even documents that I add on it, it will translate it as well. So me being myself is I would take hours making one little newsletter and then translating it in Spanish and then trying to translate it in Persian. It was hard, and then I realized, it already translates for me.
It's fantastic. Yes. It has all those. I guess I hear to the point that sometimes the parents think that you actually might speak that other language whenever the teacher doesn't always do it, but their communication had always been
but
in
it
that
keeps them
language.
open to wanting to talk to me.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
even if it's in their language, I'm able to at least receive some kind of information back.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about, you said newsletter. It made me think about Notebook LM or LM Notebook. I can't remember. But it's the one that you can upload documents and it can turn it into a podcast. And so I even think about if we have, so whenever we're sending things home to our parents or we have newsletters that go out, that's interesting to consider. what other languages that could also be done in, and if parents could listen to something about what's happening at their school if they maybe themselves don't have that literacy skill. And that's another way to keep parents engaged.
You're right.
It's fun.
Well, not setting the visual and the auditory learners.
Yes. And also, like I've heard from some principals, using it to upload what the next week is going to be, that the principal would send it out to the teachers. The teachers wouldn't always read it. And so they would just upload it into that platform, and then it would create a podcast, and then teachers could listen to that little AI podcast on the way to work, knowing what was coming up that week from the principal. So that was a fun way to even get teachers a little bit more engaged. I thought that was fun. So these conversations have been really, really wonderful that we've had over this semester, and I'm really thankful for this one that we are having right now. And we've discussed also a lot about how technology can help us create this holistic linguistic ecosystem for our students. And so I just want to hear from you all in your personal thoughts and feelings on this, as well as your professional ones. Share as much as you would like, but because you might have some personal experiences with this as well. Coming into the university from another country, being someone who taught in another country. I know that you and I, Genevieve, both shared that experience. That's been so much fun. You as well, Aya. And then also, I know that we get to share siendo bilingüe en inglés en español together. So that's so much fun, Eva. I love it so much. But then, so again, you have these language experiences somehow in your past for where you are today. So I think about our schools and our school districts. And so the question I want to pose is, what steps do you think that our schools and our school districts can take to create that holistic linguistic ecosystem through this digital age learning ecosystem as well, to really ensure that we have equitable access to resources for our multilingual students and their families while incorporating all students' linguistic repertoires? What are some steps that you would like to see school districts take, or what are some that maybe they're already taking, or any ideas that you've thought about during our conversations?
Well, I mean, I know professional development is always needed. And with how much things are changing, just being trained on, or just being informed of the different ones that are out there, because there's constantly things that are being created and even things that are going away. Like one of the things we talked about, there was Jamboard. It went away. We had no idea, obviously, and then it got changed to something new. So just even being up to date on, you could have used this, but here's an alternative. No, here's an alternative
because it's changing, right?
But just knowing what is available just by itself, but because we don't even have the time to go through every single thing that's out there.
I know that's the hard part, and most districts don't have like one person over this to be able to share that information out with you, and you're kind of required to kind of do it on your own, and you're like, when?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think just finding those things, those sites, even if it takes like 30 minutes just to have like a conversation with the teachers and being like, or just collaborating, being like, these are the ones I found, this is what I'm using, and then you're just sharing it with the other one, and then they can look at it and say, well, actually I found another one that's better. And then you're just building off of each other that way.
I think that you reminded me that I'm glad that you said professional development, because it reminded me that professional development classes or even talks about our English language learners should be open to all.
Yes.
To all, because I really wanted to go to your PD, but I couldn't because I'm not an ELD teacher, so I couldn't go.
Oh no!
Exactly. So it should be open to all teachers, because we all work with them. We have them in our classroom.
Big shout out to Miss Sally Diaz, also from Putnam City. That's not just for our ELL student, but also our ALL student. I love how she always says we're all students. Right?
All students.
Yes.
Yeah, so that should be open to everybody, because, I mean, those who are interested in wanting to help them will be able to go and have at least the opportunity and decision to make it or not.
And here's the other component to this, and this is something that listeners, you may have heard me say this on another episode as well, but it's true, though, is that no one is a native-born speaker of academic language. And so even today, whenever I was talking with a 5th grade teacher, they said, why are we not putting this up as the filter that we go through when we consider language domains, including viewing and visually representing, and then taking that language assessment kind of mindset of having to utilize language because language is that vehicle to get access to that content. So if we would take everyone and go through that process, it would help everybody gain more language, whether you have one linguistic repertoire or multiple linguistic repertoires.
Yes.
Well, in technology, we don't. While we're focused on multilingual learners, it's useful for the monolingual learners as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
like while we're discussing how it can benefit multilingual learners, like you're still benefiting your monolingual students also. And so, using technology, even if you don't have ELs in your classroom, which we know is more rare now than before, but you can still use these resources for your students and make it more entertaining and engaging.
You all are saying so many great things because it's reminding me of so many other people that have been on the podcast as well. Dr. Joby Lawrence is someone else that was on another podcast episode, and she was talking about that, but then also making the joke that there were no monolingual English only students harmed in the making of this professional development. Like, it's still going to help everyone. Like, no one's going to suffer. Like, instead, all of our boats are going to rise, and it's so much better. And it allows us that opportunity to now make more cross-linguistic connections, more cross-cultural connections. And I think that whenever we know that we have all of this technology just at our fingertips, and going back to something, David, that you said in the beginning, leveraging AI to learn more about the culture of your students, we can do that so easily now. And so if we're able to really stop and take a step back and say, okay, you know what? Considering the role that cultural proficiency plays in my profession and in my setting and in my school and in my district, how can I know who is represented in my community and in my school and in my classroom? And how can I therefore be able to assess that cultural knowledge, to value that diversity, and then to institutionalize cultural knowledge within my building so we're all getting to share this and we're all getting to learn more about it because we are global citizens. And we have technology that can help us do that. You all are so amazing, and I'm thankful that I've been able to be with you on your master's degree journey, and I'm thankful that I've been able to learn from you and your experiences, and I appreciate all that you all do in your personal lives, and just incredibly proud of you for what you're doing in your professional lives as well. And so as we're about to wrap up here, I want to be able to open it up if there are any other comments that you would like to share or any other type of closing words or recommendations or celebrations or anything like that to share with our listeners. Read the book.
Yes,
Read
I love the
and,
book.
And listeners, just so you know, we will have a link in the description for this book, as well as to some of the other resources in this book, so you can get some ideas of other apps and websites that were provided in the amazing book called Digital Age Teaching for English Learners, A Guide to Equitable Learning for All Students, the second edition. So yes, you will have access to that. So read the book, and apart from that, any other comments that you would like to share with us?
I think there's going to be a lot of information that you're like, and overwhelmed. But as Genevieve said, we can share the information and then just start with like a basic, simple, like easy one that everybody knows. And then you open your own like world and then explore.
Yeah.
And that's how we I think start and then integrate the AI to the classroom, and then that expand to the other people and the community, and then now that we can make the monolingual people jealous, so that way they can start learning more language, and then it's good influence.
Yeah. There was a little kindergarten student that said, that's not fair. She speaks 2 languages and I only speak 1. And I think, that's where I want to get into. Where I want to learn more languages too, right? Make that the fun thing.
There are a lot of benefits that not a lot of people knows about. Yeah.
So many.
My thing is, don't be afraid of it. Because I think of maybe you're an older educator who, technology, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have the time. Maybe you're close to retiring and you're like, why do I need to learn it? You, as I was saying, go simple. Even just using Google Docs and Google Slides, which you have access.
Putting hyperlinks
you have,
in
ha- you have,
there,
you have access to. You
Yes.
can still use that as technology, as a tool to have them collaborate and work together. So don't be afraid of the technology and everything that's out there with all the information.
Yeah.
Because if you're afraid, then they're going to be afraid to use it.
And then absolutely, using AI will save you a lot of time.
It will save you a lot of time.
Like
a
more
lot of
than you
time.
think, yeah.
Even with some presentations like Gamma.
Yes.
So if you want to
Love
get
that.
yeah,
That was
listeners,
a
you
good
can hear it.
song.
They got
Yes.
excited. That's definitely a wonderful one. So look that one up too.
Yeah, that
for
was
sure.
the eye opener.
It
Yeah,
sure
that was the good one.
Definitely come in with an open mind and an open heart.
and open minds, open hearts, and then space and time to be able to listen again to the best professors that we have, which are our students. Listen to our families and let their voices be the one to help us understand more. That now I know what technology exists and what's out there, and then I want to hear from them, the ones that I'm serving. How can I best leverage that based on what you explained to me that your needs and desires are? And then how can we bring all this together so we're working at this together with a community and not at anybody, right?
I always tell my students, tell me how I can help you, help me, help you. And they're like, what? And I'm like, how can I help you, help me, help you? Help you.
Help you.
Well, I think that the best question we can always ask is just that. How can I help? Man, you all are amazing. It has been a wonderful time with you. I appreciate you. And world, just look out for them because these are three incredible humans and educators. And I sincerely mean this. I just care about you all so much. I'm thankful for what you do. I love our time together. And I appreciate you being on our podcast today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to say thank you to all the listeners out there for being with us during this time. Thank you to EduSkills, our sponsor for this podcast, for Cultural Connections Lab, and of course, to Mike Overholt, who is our incredible producer, been in the room with us all this time. Yeah, big round of applause. He's so amazing. He makes all of us sound good and, when possible, on YouTube, look good. So listeners, go look for any of those. And again, we will have links to the resource of the book and other links for you in the description. And I want to say thank you all so much. And to everyone out there, remember you are loved. All right, adios. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Adios!